1. Morning protein ingestion activates muscle protein synthesis within the first hour of waking by supplying essential amino acids during the post-absorptive state, when the body has been fasting for 7 to 9 hours, and muscle protein breakdown rates are at their daily peak. Overnight, circulating insulin drops to baseline, hepatic glycogen partially depletes, and plasma amino acid concentrations fall below the threshold required to sustain net positive muscle protein balance. Consuming protein immediately after waking floods the portal circulation with amino acids, particularly leucine, which crosses the threshold required to phosphorylate P70S6 kinase and initiate ribosomal translation of myofibrillar proteins. Researcher Donald Lehman at the University of Illinois identified leucine's role as the primary mTORC1 trigger in foundational work published through the early 2000s. A minimum of 40 grams of high leucine protein, such as whey isolate or whole eggs, consumed within 30 minutes of waking, maximally stimulates this anabolic response. 2. Progressive overload tracking forces skeletal muscle adaptation by systematically increasing mechanical tension on muscle fibers beyond what the neuromuscular system has previously encountered, triggering satellite cell activation and myofibrillar hypertrophy through mechanotransduction pathways. Mechanical tension activates integrin receptors on the sarcolemma, which transduce force into intracellular signaling through focal adhesion kinase, an enzyme that phosphorylates downstream targets including mTORC1 and MAP, initiating the synthesis of actin and myosin heavy chain proteins. Without progressive increases in load or volume, the mechanotransduction signal plateaus and hypertrophic adaptation ceases entirely. The systematic application of progressive overload was formalized by Dr. Thomas DeLorme during World War II rehabilitation programs, where progressive resistance protocols rebuilt muscle in injured soldiers faster than any prior method. Increasing training load by 2.5 kilograms or adding 1 repetition per set per week produces measurable hypertrophic progression over a 12-week training block. 3. Intra-workout carbohydrate consumption maintains glycolytic flux during resistance training sessions exceeding 60 minutes by replenishing muscle glycogen as it depletes, preserving the high-intensity output required to generate sufficient mechanical tension for hypertrophic signaling. Type 2 fast-twitch muscle fibers, the primary fibers recruited during heavy compound lifts, rely almost exclusively on anaerobic glycolysis for ATP production during maximal efforts lasting 6 to 30 seconds. As glycogen concentration in these fibers drops below 70 millimoles per kilogram of wet muscle, force production capacity decreases, bar velocity slows, and the mechanical tension stimulus driving hypertrophy falls below the effective threshold. Sports nutritionists at the Australian Institute of Sport established intra-workout carbohydrate protocols in the 1980s to extend high-quality training volume in elite athletes. Consuming 30 to 45 grams of fast-digesting carbohydrate, such as dextrose or Vitargo, at the 45-minute mark of training, sustains glycolytic output through the session's final working sets. 4. Post-training cold exposure limitation preserves the inflammatory signaling cascade that initiates muscle repair and growth by avoiding premature suppression of prostaglandin and cytokine activity in the hours immediately following resistance training. Exercise-induced muscle damage activates nuclear factor kappa B in satellite cells and resident macrophages, triggering the release of IL-6, IGF-1, and hepatocyte growth factor, signaling molecules that recruit satellite cells to damaged myofibers and initiate myonuclear accretion. Cold water immersion at temperatures below 15 degrees Celsius within 60 minutes of training constricts blood vessels, clears inflammatory mediators from the interstitial space, and blunts the prostaglandin-driven signaling that coordinates this repair sequence. Research published in the Journal of Physiology in 2015 confirmed that cold water immersion after resistance training reduces satellite cell activity and long-term strength gains compared to passive recovery. Delaying any cold exposure by a minimum of 4 hours post-training preserves the full anabolic inflammatory window. 5. Daytime protein distribution across 4 evenly spaced meals maximizes the number of discrete muscle protein synthesis events occurring within a 24-hour period, by repeatedly crossing the leucine threshold required to trigger mTORC1 activation. Each meal produces a transient 2 to 3 hour window of elevated muscle protein synthesis, after which the anabolic response refractory period resets regardless of continued amino acid availability. Consuming protein in 2 large meals, common in intermittent fasting protocols, produces 2 synthesis events per day. Distributing the same total protein across 4 meals spaced 4 hours apart produces 4 discrete synthesis events, doubling the daily anabolic stimulus without altering total caloric or protein intake. This meal frequency and muscle protein synthesis relationship was quantified by Stuart Phillips at McMaster University across a series of studies published between 2012 and 2016. 4 meals of 40 grams of protein each, spaced 4 hours apart, outperforms 2 80-gram meals in net 24-hour muscle protein balance by approximately 25%. The VIBE 6. Resistance band warm-up activation increases motor unit recruitment during subsequent compound lifts by pre-activating the neuromuscular connections between the primary motor cortex and the targeted muscle group before the working sets begin. The central nervous system recruits motor units in an orderly sequence. Slow twitch type 1 units first, progressing to fast twitch type 2 units as force demands increase. Pre-activating a muscle group with light resistance band work primes the Golgi tendon organ and muscle spindle feedback loops, reducing the neural inhibition that limits motor unit recruitment in cold, unaroused tissue. Soviet weightlifting coaches systematized pre-activation protocols during the 1960s and 1970s as part of the complex training methodology that dominated Olympic lifting through that era. 2 sets of 20 resistance band pull-aparts or hip thrusts performed immediately before the first compound movement increases electromyographic activity in the target muscle by 18 to 23% during the working sets. 7. Creatine monohydrate daily maintenance sustains intramuscular phosphocreatine stores at saturation, extending the ATP resynthesis window during maximal effort sets and enabling higher total training volume. The primary driver of hypertrophic adaptation, Sikhnith, within each session. Phosphocreatine donates a phosphate group to ADP via the creatine kinase reaction, regenerating ATP faster than glycolysis or oxidative phosphorylation during efforts lasting under 10 seconds. Elevated phosphocreatine availability allows an additional 1 to 3 repetitions per set at maximal load before phosphagen depletion forces a reduction in force output. German chemist Michel-Eugène Chevreul first isolated creatine from skeletal muscle in 1832, though its ergogenic application did not reach mainstream athletic use until British researchers published performance data following the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. A daily maintenance dose of 5 grams of creatine monohydrate sustains full intramuscular saturation indefinitely and costs approximately $0.17 per day in bulk powder form. 8. Sunlight exposure and vitamin D synthesis supports testosterone production and muscle protein synthesis by activating the vitamin D receptor, a nuclear transcription factor expressed in skeletal muscle, Leydig cells of the testes, and the anterior pituitary, which regulates genes involved in myocyte differentiation and steroidogenesis. Vitamin D deficiency reduces testosterone production by impairing the enzymatic conversion of cholesterol to pregnenolone in testicular Leydig cells, a rate-limiting step in androgen biosynthesis. Low testosterone directly reduces the transcriptional activity of androgen receptor-regulated genes in skeletal muscle, including those encoding myosin heavy chain isoforms and insulin-like growth factor-binding proteins. Vitamin D's role in muscle function was first formally investigated in the 1950s, when European physicians observed profound proximal muscle weakness in severely deficient patients. 20 minutes of direct midday sun exposure to arms and legs produces 10,000 to 20,000 IU of vitamin D3, equivalent to 25 times the standard dietary reference intake. 9. Strategic deload weeks prevent the accumulated central nervous system fatigue that suppresses anabolic hormone output and reduces neuromuscular efficiency, allowing supercompensation. a documented rebound in strength and hypertrophic capacity that occurs after structured recovery periods. Prolonged training without recovery elevates cortisol to testosterone ratio by stimulating the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis while simultaneously suppressing hypothalamic GnRH pulsatility, which reduces LH secretion and downstream testosterone synthesis. Elevated cortisol accelerates muscle protein catabolism through glucocorticoid receptor activation in myocytes, directly opposing the anabolic signaling that training is designed to produce. The supercompensation model was first described by Russian physiologist Nikolai Yakovlev in the 1950s and became the theoretical basis for periodized training programs across Soviet bloc sports science. 1 deload week per 4 to 6 weeks of progressive training, reducing volume by 40% while maintaining load, restores anabolic hormone output, and produces a measurable strength rebound within 7 days of resuming full training. 10. Sleep architecture optimization drives the majority of muscular repair and growth hormone secretion that converts training stimulus into structural tissue adaptation, making it the single non-negotiable daily habit on this list. Slow-wave sleep, stages 3 and 4 of the non-REM cycle, triggers pulsatile growth hormone release from the anterior pituitary, with peak GH concentration occurring within the first 90 minutes of sleep onset. GH stimulates hepatic IGF-1 production, which activates the PI3 key actium-mTOR signaling axis in skeletal muscle, and drives satellite cell proliferation and myonuclear incorporation into damaged myofibers. Cutting sleep to 6 hours suppresses GH secretion by 70% compared to 8-hour sleep, according to research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. 8 hours of consolidated sleep, initiated before midnight to align with the circadian GH pulse, maximizes anabolic hormone output and produces measurably greater lean mass accumulation over a 12-week training block than equivalent training performed on 6 hours of sleep.